Today we are going to learn about congruent triangles. This is section 11.2. Recall from last chapter, chapter 10, that triangles are geometric figures that have 3 sides and 3 angles. Today we're going to look at the congruent triangles, which are triangles that have the same shape and the same size. When we have congruent triangles, there are corresponding parts to these triangles. So those are the pieces that match up within the triangles. So for example, side AB matches up with side YX. So those two sides are in the same place on the triangle and are the exact same size. When we are labeling corresponding parts, we say that the side BA is corresponding to the side XY. Notice the symbol for corresponding is an equal sign with a squiggle over the top of it. The next set of corresponding parts is AC to YZ. Again, we can label them with the correspondence symbol. Leaving the last corresponding side on our triangle to be CB to ZX. We can also label corresponding angles within our triangle. Those are the angles that match up in the same place. So for example, angle B is corresponding with angle X. Angle A is corresponding with angle Y. And we have angle Z is corresponding with angle C. Notice when I was drawing in the angles, I labeled them with 3 different marks. When they have a matching amount of marks, that means that those angles are congruent. So that is one thing that can help us determine if the triangles are congruent. The angle measurements have to also be congruent. So part of your homework tonight, they are going to give you a set of triangles and you need to name the corresponding parts and complete what we call the congruency statement. I find it easiest to start with the angles. Starting with the angles allows you to make sure that the letters are matching up correctly. So if we look at angle J, it has 1 mark on it. So I have angle J, and I move over to the second triangle and see that angle M also has a singular mark on it. So angle J is congruent to angle M. Those two are corresponding parts. Moving on, I see that K has 2 marks and N has 2 marks. So those 2 angles are also congruent. And finally, that leaves angle L with the 3 marks and angle P with the 3 marks. So those 2 pieces are also congruent. Once I have the angles lined up, it's very easy to do the sides. You pick a pair of angles, so for example, J and K. So I can say side JK is congruent to, and I come over and I look at their matching angles, and I would see that that is MN. Next pair is KL, matching up with NP, and finally LJ, matching up with PM. The last piece of this type of problem is to complete the congruency statement. It asks you triangle JKL is congruent to, and you have to fill in the blank. So you use your angles. J is congruent to M. K is congruent to N, and L is congruent to P. So you would need to write out this whole correspondence statement on your homework. Some problems, they will give you the congruency statement. So if A, B, C is congruent to H, G, F, we need to label the corresponding parts and then complete a different congruency statement. Again, easiest to start with the angles here. Based off the congruency statement that they give us, we know that angle A is going to correspond with angle H. Those two are both the first letters in the statement, meaning that they match up congruently. Then we have angle B is corresponding with angle G. Both of those are in the second position. And angle C is corresponding with angle F. So you can use the congruency statement that they give us to start to help you determine the rest of the corresponding pieces. Going through and doing the sides, you're looking at what AB corresponds to, what BC corresponds to, and what CA corresponds to. You could also flip-flop any of these letters and still have the congruency the corresponding pieces. So in this case, AB matches up with HG. If I said BA, I would match it up with GH. BC matches up with GF, and CA matches up with FH. Last piece again is completing that congruency statement. So they have rearranged the letters to say B, A, C, which means we need to rearrange the second triangle, and then we would go G, H, F. When we have congruent triangles with our corresponding pieces, it means that their angle measurements and their side measurements are all the same. So if we're looking at the congruency statement that they give us, RST is congruent to VWX. We can say that R matches up with V, S matches up with W, and T matches up with X. So they give us those triangles and we can match up our angles and sides. If angle W is equal to 60 degrees, it's asking us what is the measure of angle S. Those two are corresponding pieces, and if they are congruent triangles, that means they are the same size. So angle S is also equal to 60 degrees. Next question they ask, the length of side ST, so this right side of our triangle, is 30 inches long. What is the length of WX? Again, the right side of the triangle, we know that they are congruent, so that would say that WX is also equal to 30 inches. So you can find missing measurements both with the angles and with the side lengths. In this one, we are giving a quilted pattern, and they tell us that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle ADE. They're asking us two questions, the measure of angle BCA and the length of side AD. So one thing that is helpful is to figure out which pieces these match up with. So BAC is this angle down at the bottom of our yellow triangle, which is triangle ABC. If we look at the other triangle, ADE, we know that angle BCA is going to correspond with angle DEA using our congruency statement. So if I come over to the second triangle, I'm looking for angle DEA, which is in the corner down there. So that tells me since they are congruent triangles with congruent angles, angle BCA is equal to 59 degrees. Same idea works with the length of AD. So we know that AD is corresponding with AB. Again, we can acknowledge that from our congruency statement. So we have side AB on the triangle, which means side AD is the same length. So I can say AD is also equal to 18 centimeters. Last part of your homework is going to be determining whether the triangles are congruent, and if they are, you are going to name the corresponding parts. Easiest to start with the corresponding parts. So we look and to see, do we have angles that match up? Again, you are looking at the marks inside of the angle. So based on the marks inside of the angle, I could say that angle G matches up with angle P. Both of them have one dash mark inside of their angle. Angle H matches up with angle Q. Again, both of them have the same dash marks inside of their angles. And angle F matches up with angle R. 3 dashes inside each of those angles. Now I need to look at the sides. So our angles match up, which means we have similar triangles. Now we need to see if they're congruent. So we look at first side, which is GH, and that has to match up with side PQ. The picture tells us that GH is 9.5 centimeters. And if I come over and look at the second picture, PQ is also 9.5 centimeters. So those two are equal, so we have the first piece of our congruency statement. Then I can look at HF, which should match up to QR. HF is 6 centimeters and QR is also 6 centimeters. So again, those two check out. Finally, we have FG, which should match up with RP. FG is 8 centimeters. RP is also 8 centimeters. So all three sides are equal, which means that I have congruent triangles. When you complete the congruency statement, you need to acknowledge that triangle GHF is congruent to triangle PQR. You can put the letters in any order as long as your corresponding parts match up. So another example of a congruency statement would be FGH is congruent to RPQ. So you can put them in any order as long as the corresponding parts match up. Again, same idea. Start with the corresponding angles. So take a minute and see if you can line up the corresponding angles. So we look at angle H, that has one dash mark, and that matches up with angle K. Then we move on. Angle G has 2 dash marks. We do not have a matching angle for that in our second triangle, so we're going to leave that for a moment. Angle I matches up with angle L. So what we have here, we have 2 sets of matching angles. That means that our third set has to match, because triangles have to add up to 180 degrees. And if 2 of the angle measurements are the same, that means their third measurement is going to be the same. So we can add in those 2 marks onto angle J. Now that we have our matching angle measurements, the next thing we have to check is if the sides are congruent. So the first side we're looking at is HG, and that should match up with side KJ. So if I look at my triangles, HG is 3 inches and KJ is 4 inches. Those 2 are not equal. We know that 3 is not equal to 4. So we can go ahead and say that the triangles are not congruent because they don't have corresponding sides. So we can acknowledge that they are not congruent because they do not have corresponding sides. If the triangles are not congruent, you need to give an explanation for why. When you are done with your notes, come up to the desk and you will get your homework assignment.